This week, we bring you some of our best segments from 2019. I'm Glenn McGinnis, and this is Outburst. October 17th, 2019 marked 1 year since cannabis was legalized in Canada. Shortly after the anniversary date, we took to the streets with this question.
After 1 year, is marijuana legalization working?
No, because they still have black market. It's everywhere, no matter what. I don't have to personally drive to a dispensary to get it. I can walk down the street and get it.
I don't see a tremendous difference in anything with the legalization of marijuana. I think that people who used it before, whether it be for healthcare or recreational purposes, continue to do so. Maybe the fact that I don't see any difference is truly an indication that it is working.
Quality and quality control is there, and there's more acceptance. So you know, some of us were talking about it when something's legal, it's the great desire to go after it is not there. So yeah, I think it's working.
The legalization has helped from kind of the black market side of getting it off the streets, but from what I can tell, it seems to be having a positive impact, and certainly from the medical side, it's becoming a lot more normalized as a recreational drug. I believe it's a lot more normalized, and the stigma is starting to kind of come away from it, but I think it's still early days, so there's a lot yet to be seen, especially as edibles and the next phase kind of comes to fruition. That'll have, I think, a bigger impact.
Like if we're looking at the use of CBD for medical purposes, I think that's always kind of been working because it's always required a doctor's prescription. If we're looking at recreational use, from what I hear, I think it's about 50-50 purchases. Lots of like the mom and pop shops that have opened up can't maintain supply, so lots of people that smoke go through their previous suppliers.
That piece bothers me when they've taken it too far. I see people smoking everywhere. You can see it in our community, and the air is filled with these. Some of the neighbors are smoking it now more so than ever, and it's just these are the things that those things bothers me more than if it's used for medicinal purposes. I think it's okay then.
I think so. A lot more people are taking to actually going to the stores and purchasing it legally. People appreciate the fact that it's legal now, and it's not as much of a taboo. So,
I guess so. I mean, tax-wise, we're collecting some tax doing it, but I see a lot of supply problems and getting the stuff distributed. I see that the black market is still very active, so it hasn't fixed that. Will it ever fix that? I don't know. It's been forever, right? So, is it working? Partially.
I think so. It seems like, especially now that there's more stores, it seems pretty readily available. So it seems like a pretty good deterrent to the black market. It's right there. It's legal. You're not going to get in trouble for having it. You can fly with it through, like within the country, obviously that kind of thing. But it's especially I think in Alberta, it's worked really, really well.
Frankly, myself, it's been a big benefit because I've always been asked if it could help with some of my chronic pain issues. So now I can actually talk to an expert and know what I'm getting. So I'm not worried about any drugs being slipped into my marijuana, and I can actually get what I need. And I have noticed less young people smoking pot because I feel like it's just not as profitable to be selling it on the street anymore.
So I've just come back from being out of the country, so I'm getting all of my information from family and friends. And no, they screwed it up. They did not have the infrastructure ready when it was legalized. And I think there were over 1 million hits that day. And I know personally my friends are not going to the government site to get their marijuana. So they're still going to other people. So has it been a success? No, I don't think this infrastructure was set up. I think it was the right decision. I think it was the smart move. And I do think we can be generating tons of revenue from the taxes, but it has to be set up better.
I don't know the statistics, but I expect the police are able to spend their time on more important things.
The price on the street is still lower in some cases than the price that they're selling it in the stores, but that's a matter of marketing. It's a matter of management, and I think eventually if they focus on those issues, a year or two down the road, they'll find that they will reduce the amount of marijuana that's being sold on the street.
Who else but the government could lose millions of dollars selling pot? I mean, the whole idea was a dumb one to begin with to win votes. If the idea was to keep keep marijuana out of the hands of young people, well, it's like keeping cigarettes out of their hands. That's not working very well either.
Yes, I think it's good. It's working, but it hasn't been done as well as it should have been done.
Following a federal election, which saw no Liberals elected in Alberta or Saskatchewan, concerns over a disconnect between the East and West became much more real. Back in mid-November, we posed this question to Canadians.
What could the federal government do to repair its relationship with Western Canada?
That's a really good question. They have a lot of work to do to repair that relationship. They probably have to start looking at the economy and how they can balance it out across the country, and start looking at the things that Saskatchewan and Alberta need most, which are probably the pipelines, among other things. And probably come and visit and check out what those towns that are suffering the most look like right now.
Make us a part of Canada. Like, oil's our industry, potash is our industry. Be more inclusive. That's it.
I think they got to listen a little bit more to our local people, listen to the business people. And I know we're all about pipelines and our mining sector as well. So, our agricultural sector, I don't think they get it.
Politics is more than just, okay, I stand for this. It's also, we have to see how we can make everybody work together, right? So it's more than just like I'm in one political party. We got to all work together and get the work done.
They go by seats with population, I believe, how many seats you get. But every province, I think, should have the same amount of seats. Shouldn't matter about your population.
I think what the federal government needs to do is, first of all, start communicating, which they don't. They have been dictating a lot of their own terms till now. It's time that they pay attention to this side of Canada as well, because we contribute a lot to the economy.
We're very unincluded. Ottawa will just do whatever Ottawa wants, regardless of how it affects the rest of Canada. It seems like Ottawa's the milestone of Canada, when really, like a few years ago, if you look back at 2008, Calgary was the powerhouse of all Canada. And now we're just like slumping by, like licking our wounds, kind of be like, when are we gonna catch ground again? Like we don't have much traction, to get ahead.
First off, start that pipeline, and stop wasting our money buying it and then making pretentious calls like he's been doing, right? So, that's what it is about. That's why the separatist movement is going on full blast here, and I don't blame them.
It's been dismal for 5 years now, and it's not really getting any better, and it's frustrating when you see your government saying they're going to build a pipeline but clearly not coming through with it. I don't know why we're purchasing oil from other countries and to supply the East when we have oil in our own country. We should have pipelines. It's the safest mode to transfer.
I think that in the relationship with Western Canada, the government needs to look at looking at the economic issues that are important in Western Canada and look at how we can maybe mitigate the alienation by working together and meeting with leaders in Western Canada like Alberta and Saskatchewan, talk about how we can build together as a country again.
There's going to have to be a lot of give and take right now from the federal government, not only with Western Canada, but I think Quebec, and there's a different ball playing field now for the federal government. They have to have people on side to pass their legislation. They have the coalitions. They have to do a lot of things that they didn't have to do before.
The federal government and the whole country really needs to listen to the needs of each individual province and territory to understand where they're coming from and where they want to go. We're all in this together, and we really need everybody to be to understand each other's needs.
It should go beyond provincial politics to a more Canada-wide view of the necessity for us to have our own reliable oil supply. I don't know how you do that, unfortunately, because you're going to have to get consensus. But I think it's a national issue. It shouldn't be determined by disagreements between provinces.
Like Western Canada needs to understand that times are changing and we're trying really hard to get away from oil and everything because it's so bad for the environment, but I understand that all their lives depend on it.
I'd say for one thing, build that pipeline. That pipeline he bought, it's been billions of dollars. He decided to put it in put it on the shelf. That's what I've been hearing is the biggest thing is a jobs crisis in Alberta. That's what's I think is causing the alienation, just from my understanding.
Oh, that's a tough one. First of all, I don't care who's in representative. You got to just be humble and get out there and talk to the people. Right now, Alberta wants a pipeline. There's a pipeline that should go out to Eastern Canada too. Because, I don't know if we pay for import oil out here, but why don't we keep those dollars in Canada and help pay for, the pipeline? That's just one example. I mean, there's obviously a lot more.
Tommy Douglas was the first leader of the federal NDP. Who succeeded him? Jack Layton, Thomas Mulcair, David Lewis.
Layton? David Lewis. Thomas Mulcair. Jack Layton?
Best guess would be Jack Layton.
It would be David Lewis, wouldn't it?
It would be David Lewis. Very good, sir.
Thank you very much.
David Lewis served as the leader of the New Democratic Party from 1971 to 1975 after Tommy Douglas retired. Born in Russia as David Losh, Lewis moved to Montreal with his family in 1921. He would go on to study law at McGill and later became a lawyer in Ottawa. In the 1930s, Lewis became the National Secretary for the Cooperative Commonwealth Federation, the party that would later become the NDP. Lewis was first elected to the House of Commons in 1962 in York South and served as an MP from 1965 to 1974. During the 74 election, he uttered his most famous line, calling Canadian corporations corporate welfare bums. After retiring from politics, he became a professor at Carleton University. Lewis was made a member of the Order of Canada in 1976.
The opioid epidemic has been destroying lives and families around the world, and Canada is certainly no exception. We asked Canadians what could be done. Our question:
what is the best way to combat Canada's opioid epidemic?
It would be great if we could somehow eliminate the demand for the drugs, and that's both the legal and the illegal versions. It seems to me once someone is using opioids, whether again for a legitimate medical reason or an illegitimate one, you've already got a problem, and you're now working retroactively to try to correct something that's already taken place. Ideally, the legal drugs would be dispensed a little more carefully, and the illegal drugs would be eliminated entirely at the source, whether that's from other countries or from within the domestic creation or pharmaceutical capacity. It's just too late once the problem has already hit a person. We've got to eliminate it before it gets there. Ideally, improve social conditions so that people don't go looking for it in the first place.
I think it's bringing it out into the open and having it treated medically rather than it being on the street, which is where it is right now. There's a lot of examples of countries who have done just that. I believe the Netherlands is one where they've actually made it a medical condition, and it's treated with safe, controlled, pure opiates. And it brings the population to a standstill in terms of the crime that they have to commit and the lifestyle they have to live just to achieve the illegal source of drugs.
Well, I think it's got to be on the front of the line. It's an issue that is on the streets. It's in the back streets. It's something that has a criminal element to it, and we've got to combat it right on the streets where it's at and where it's happening. I think decriminalization might be an approach to take. It's worked in other countries like Portugal, where they saw their rates of addiction and death and injury decrease dramatically, and we got to take that approach.
Definitely better education for the people who are really in charge of leading that epidemic. So, for example, doctors who prescribe the opioids and pharmacists, and just a better education as well for the public, understanding kind of exactly what these drugs do to people and their effects, I guess, and if they should be wary of, whether or not they should be taking them.
I would think you'd probably go right to the drug companies, have a word with the CEOs. Greed is taking over. So unless them guys are going to get on ball, it ain't going to happen.
I think the epidemic was created by pharmaceutical companies and by doctors prescribing, thinking or being sold on the idea that this is going to help people. And in reality, when we saw people becoming addicted, nothing was done. And so what's happened is now people are going out trying to find a solution to it. So there's the underground economy, and they're selling drugs that are probably opioid based, and that's why people are continuing to use it.
We definitely need more money put into recovery to support all levels of recovery. So we're certainly lacking in areas like detox and recovery and support for these. I work in healthcare, so these components are lacking, and so the opioid epidemic has to be addressed on a federal level for sure.
Vancouver has some interesting ideas with a safe haven area for people for drug use, because then they can get help there. I think that does work.
People are also not taking responsibility for their life. We want to medicate all the time. We don't want to. I think that's what it is. We don't know how to be responsible for our lives anymore. And this is hard living on Earth. It's not easy, and you can't medicate it away. You just can't.
We've lost a nephew to an opioid overdose, so I sympathize with everybody out there. And hey, it's a common problem. I know business people have had common problems with that as well. So it's a problem that I don't know how you can really solve it, to tell you the truth.
To end off November, we asked Canadians about the state of equal pay and equal opportunity for men and women in this country. Our question:
what is the state of gender equality in Canada?
Gender equality in Canada, I never really think of that. I think in general, it depends on who you work for. If you work for government, federal, there's a lot of guidelines in place so that it creates equality. If you work for the provincial government, it's a little bit, it's good and it's bad. They have guidelines, but things aren't as strict as in the federal government. In private industry, well, we're all trying to promote the idea of gender equality, but in actuality, most of the time it does work, but sometimes it doesn't.
So I was a young businesswoman in Fredericton. Fredericton is known to be kind of a hub for starting businesses, and it's known to be relatively easy. But as a young woman myself, I've faced a lot of discrimination and challenges just based on my gender, and it's been very frustrating, but I do find if you know where to look, there are definitely some good people out there that are willing to help and, try and combat those discriminations. But yeah, it's definitely something that needs to be worked on for sure.
Yeah. Do you think the country's moving in a positive direction?
I definitely feel like we're definitely growing and learning, but we've definitely got a long way to go for sure.
I'd say I've heard the wage gap still exists to some degree. I'd say we're getting there, probably decently there. However, if we talk about the whole LGBTQ plus community, I don't think it's there yet. And I think more work has to be done towards that.
When I consider, I was born in the 60s, and in the 60s we were thinking, equality and, women's rights. And so I guess I sort of thought that we would be a little farther advanced and, have women's equality, gender equality, and we certainly aren't anywhere near where I thought we would be at this point.
I'd say it's changing it's heading in the right direction. It's people are getting more comfortable with it, right? It's something that has it's new to my generation, but it's going to be an everyday thing. Like my kids are in elementary school now, and I don't think it's going to be an issue for them when they get to be teenagers and older. It's going to be the way Canada is, and the world hopefully will be. So
it's moving along. Yeah, it's moving along, and I know in my work environment, it's a big change in the last few years, and I'm excited about it. And diversity, not just gender equality, but it's moving along. I think it's a no-brainer. People understand that and just need to get there.
It's great to see what our Prime Minister is doing in Parliament. So that sort of removes the glass ceiling to some extent. And but there's always room for improvement, for sure.
Okay. What do you think can improve?
Well, pay equity I think is still an issue. What else could improve?
We could have more women higher up in the workplace. There still seem to be down at the bottom.
It's interesting to read news reports as to how few women are represented in corporate boards in Canada of the large corporations and things like that. Clearly that's symptomatic of a systemic problem there, and so something has to be done about that.
For me, as a woman working, I just feel like in the pay grade, like je pense pour la paye, I'm more French, so pay grade, we're still behind. And then I was reading in an article who was saying that for example, in Quebec, there's more women who are pursuing university study than men. But still, we go in that same field, but we still not get paid the same. We still not get choose on interview because they're scared that we're gonna get pregnant and then leave work for too long. So that's for me, there's a long road to go.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And what about yourself?
I agree with what she said. I think there's a lot to implement. It's definitely better than it was a couple of years ago, but we are working towards that change, and I'm glad that they are working on it.
The name Labrador, as in Newfoundland and Labrador, is derived from which language? Portuguese, French, or Italian?
Italian. I would say French.
Portuguese.
I think it'd be French.
Portuguese?
It's Portuguese.
Oh, okay, good.
Very good. The name Labrador is derived from the Portuguese word lavrador, meaning farmer, plower, or laborer. The peninsula of Labrador was likely named after João Fernandes Lavrador, a Portuguese explorer from the late 1400s. He charted the region and southwestern Greenland and relayed the information back to Europe. A European map from 1532 is one of the earliest references to the region being named after someone from the Azores Islands. It was previously referred to as Terra Corterialis in Europe. Finally, the British royal family have long been a source of history and culture for this country. And while many Canadians are in favor of the monarchy, some feel it's time we moved on. Our question: does Canada need the monarchy?
Yes.
Why?
Because the Queen is the Commander-in-Chief of the Canadian Armed Forces. Did you know that?
I think, yeah, it's how the country has been built. It's a constitutional monarchy, if I remember. And I feel like they need to keep that like the way it is, the way it's represented by the General Governor. It's not a bad thing. It's just part of history. So yeah, it's not a bad thing.
I don't think so. I think it's time for just us to move forward without it.
I'm not really too sure what the monarchy does for Canada in that respect, so in my opinion, probably not.
It's outdated. I don't think it gives anything to Canadian policies or politics.
That's a very good question. No.
Why not?
We are independent.
Yes.
Why?
It's our history. We're a quiet country. We're a calm country. We believe in everything that's happened to make Canada what it is, and I believe in the royalty.
No.
Why?
I think the Canada needed the monarchy at one stage, but we don't need it anymore. We should be an independent country and independent. I would like to hear the Prime Minister give the throne speech, not from the throne, but I don't think that we need a Governor General, and I don't think we should be attached to the monarchy.
Sir?
I'm of the same mind, believe it or not. And but when you look at
Why is the monarchy not going to disappear in Britain? Because it's for tourism, in my view.
I think we should follow it in as much as we need to have it as part of the Constitution, but as far as what happens with Aboriginal people and their relationship to the Queen and the Crown, that's something completely different.
So I could see some purpose to being connected with the Commonwealth. However, I don't know in terms of the monarchy itself. I would say that Canada could do fine without it.
It's just well established, and it's a symbol of I don't know, unity and whatnot within the Commonwealth. So I think it's really good.
I think so. What? I think it's an important symbol of stability. Yeah.
Tell me how it symbolizes stability to you.
It's something that's held Canada and the other Commonwealth nations together for centuries. For me, I think it's an important feature of Canada.
I was born in Britain.
I was born in Britain too, so
And I
probably say yes to
like
that.
the monarchy, but I don't think we should have to pay for it. They should pay for themselves because they can afford it. I've lived here 59 years. So I've raised both children. My husband had a good profession, and I wouldn't live in Britain, but I like it.
I don't see why. We seem to be okay on our own, and the monarchy is just symbolic. That's all.
I don't think so. I think that we're kind of independent from the monarchy. It's fun to follow, but I don't think that we need them to function as a country, no.
Yes, I love it.
Why do you love it?
I just love it. I love everything about it.
I believe that it's important to us because it represents kind of our history. So we have the War of 1812, we have her on our coins. When you go to the army, you have to salute her and you say you're fighting for the Queen. So there is some Canadian cultural stuff there, whether or not you agree with it, but...
Do we need them? No. Do we want them? Yes. I'm so tired of everybody getting rid of everything that was old. It's a great institution. It's a wonderful tradition. Do we need them? We don't actually have them other than figureheads anyway, so I don't know what we're getting rid of other than a figurehead if we get rid of them.
Thanks for watching this episode of Outburst on the Cable Public Affairs channel. I'm Glenn McGuinness. If you have any comments or questions about this show or any other show, you can find us on social media. You can also find us on our website at www.cpac.ca. It's your turn to speak up, and we're listening.